Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliot Margolis, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And today we are interviewing Jonathan Ring, who is running for Register of Deeds in our area. And before you even ask me, what is Register of Deeds? What do they do? I'm going to let Jonathan tell you. Welcome, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you very much, Elliot, for having me.
Good to have you here.
Really appreciate
Nice to have you.
And now tell us what you're running for and why.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank Beverly Cam for filming this. My name's Jonathan Ring. I'm a candidate for the Register of Deeds of Essex County South, or the Southern District of Essex County. And the election is going to be on Tuesday, November 6th, and I've put a lot of information on my website, jonathanring.org. But the office, I've spoken with many voters out there, and I do get the same reaction. Registry of what? So a lot of people a lot of people are not familiar with the Registry of Deeds at first, until you start explaining what it does. There are 21 Registry of Deeds in Massachusetts. Some of them are under county government, some of them are under state. This particular one is under the state government. And the purpose of the Registry of Deeds is to record your land transactions or your real estate transactions. This is where your deed is filed, this is where your mortgage is filed. And this is where a lot of real estate attorneys go on behalf of their customers to file your deeds, your paperwork. And a lot of communities rely on the Registry of Deeds in what they do.
Now, Jonathan, your opponent is a long-time incumbent.
Yes, he is.
What did you tell me, 40-some-odd years?
Yeah, about 40 years. He's running again for another 6-year term. And that's how long these terms last, about 6 years. Yeah. And this race hasn't been on the ballot. Rephrase that, it has been on the ballot, but it's been unchallenged since '94. And what drew me into this race, first and foremost, is the fact that we need citizens involved, we need management involved in the Registry of Deeds, because your deed is your most valuable asset. You need to make sure that all of the paperwork is properly recorded and properly in the right order. And what concerned me about this position, what concerned me about the incumbent, was that he was using his office not as a political machine. How should I say it? He basically used his office to solicit his employees for campaign donations, not just by going to voter rolls and, oh, hey, this person happens to work for me, but actually using the records of his office, the HR department of his office, to pull privacy information and add that to his campaign donors list. And he's been soliciting for years since. It's been documented since 2011. We don't know if it's gone any further than that. And he's also used his office to go after banks and mortgage companies and other companies related to title transfers. And it's not to say that mortgage companies have always been doing the right thing, but he's going beyond kind of the authority of his office. It's not a policing agency. It's not a fraud detection agency, although there are some educational tools that the Registry of Deeds has used and can continue to use to alert people about scams and frauds, and it needs to look into enhancing its fraud protection program, its property fraud watch program. There are things that it can do in an educational sense, but in terms of its policing ability, its lobbying ability, that's not what the Registry of Deeds is designed to do. It's just time to bring it back to what its original function is, is to make sure that we record accurate records and to get politics out of the Registry of Deeds.
But who oversees the office and the person running it? If he's been allowed to get away with this for all this time, it appears as though no one's overseeing it.
The register is the title of the manager of that office, what I'm running for. Above him is the Secretary of State. The Registry of Deeds functions under the division of is a division of the Secretary of State's office.
And who's that, Bill Galvin?
Bill Galvin,
Galvin.
correct.
So Democrat with Democrat.
With Democrats.
So Democrats can't do anything wrong according to the Democrats.
That's right. And plus, he's been a long-term
But it would seem to
employee.
me that this is a position where your party really shouldn't make any difference. I mean, you're looking to file this and file that correctly.
Yep.
Now, it also seems to me that if he's been in office for 40-plus years, he's probably not as savvy with computers and the new technology that you might be. But tell her, what are you going to bring to the office that he doesn't do?
Well, I am going to bring, well, talking about computer savviness, he believes that the registry office in Salem is the model that everybody's looking towards, but that's not really true. They're looking towards Richard Howe, for example, who's the Register of Deeds in Middlesex North, who's on the cutting edge of technology when it comes to enhancing e-filing. And so we need to take a look at his models, see how he is able to upgrade, how he's been able to upgrade his network to e-file faster and incorporate that into the Salem's Registry of Deeds. The other thing too, I mean, he's bragged about having a Smithsonian Award for improvements in technology. He puts that right on his website. But that award he won 20 years ago. He hasn't won an award since then on that issue. I mean, it's great that he won that award. We'll commend him for that. But that was 20 years ago. So we need to keep abreast with technology for today. We need to make sure that we're staying connected to the land court computers and their network. And we need to make sure that we're upgrading the computers in the office for customers that are coming in, but doing more online work as well.
Now, do you interact with, I know I saw all the cities and towns that you cover. Do you interact with, like, the city councilors and, in the case of a town, with the town officials for any of this, not like properties, city properties or town properties?
The Register of Deeds can do that. Keep in mind that any properties that properties that have been abandoned, it's required by law that they're published in the newspapers, and that's already done. That's something that the Registry of Deeds does not do, and that's not its main function. It can always provide the information, but the other thing that comes out of the Registry of Deeds budget, I shouldn't say budget, I should say fees, because the Registry of Deeds is a $2.85 million budget, but it gains about $36 million in fees this past year alone. That's an increase. And one of the things that you pay for when you're paying for a recording is that a portion of those fees go to CPA funds. So they go to the state, and those funds are distributed to all the communities in CPA. Now, the Senate, unfortunately, unanimously voted to increase registry fees, but not for the purpose of fixing any deficit in the budget or even any deficit in the registry. It was to increase the fees to CPA. Now, my opponent says he opposes the fee increases, but at the same time, he says he supports increasing fees or to CPA, increasing more monies going to CPA. Well, considering the way the Senate voted, it's a contradiction. You can't have it both ways. The Senate, for the purpose of throwing more money at CPA, increased those fees. It's basically taxing one type of user to benefit another user, and that's what it comes down to. So that's something that I oppose. I want to keep the fees as low as they possibly can for the users at the registry. I'd like to see fees even lower because it's demonstrated that a lot of that money is just going into state coffers, and we don't know a lot of where that money is going.
Now, in doing a little research about this, and talking to a number of people, and they say that your opponent seems to not be as healthy as he used to be, and a little bit confused at times. Would you say it's time for him to retire for that reason alone, let alone the number of years he's been in office?
I would. Well, first of all, let me just say that I will commend John O'Brien on one thing, that he was honest about his diagnosis of Lewy body syndrome. It's a very serious disease.
It's a form of dementia.
It's a form of dementia, and over a long period of time, it can result in memory loss, confusion, and various other kinds of disorders, and it's not good. And my heart goes out to anybody who has been diagnosed that way. So I do commend him for coming forward and expressing that and letting the public know, the voters know. But my focus is on being a full-time manager of the Registry of Deeds. I'm a full-time manager at the UPS store that I manage that franchise currently.
Which one?
UPS store in Beverly, right here in Beverly, at the Shaw's Plaza. It grosses about $400,000 to $500,000 worth of sales, and I not only manage that, but manage employees, do hiring of employees, training of employees, try to stay up current with industry standards, provide notary services. A lot of the documents that go into the Registry of Deeds probably have my notary stamp on it. So maybe they've seen my name already just because of that. But the other thing I do, and the other experience I bring to bear, is my current membership of the Rockport Housing Authority. And actually, I had to go into the Registry of Deeds one time because we have a property for the Rockport Housing Authority that abuts another property, and there was a right-of-way. And there's a little discussion. Was a discussion at one of our board meetings about whether or not that right-of-way should be eliminated. And what I learned is that you have to find out who all the parties of the right-of-way are, and believe it or not, who they originally were. Whether it was the owner of the house, the owner of the RHA association, could it be town government? Could there be other people involved in the right-of-way? And so in order to find that out, you had to do research. And this is what title examiners do all the time. They examine titles to find out whether there's any encumbrances on a property. A right-of-way can be an encumbrance. An unpaid mortgage can be another type of encumbrance. But they look to see if there are any kinds of encumbrances. But I didn't go to a title examiner. I decided I wanted to do a little, as a member of the board, I wanted to do a little bit more research on it. So I did go to the Registry of Deeds office, and we, the employees there were very helpful. They helped me look through some files. They helped me look through some of the deeds to both properties, and there was more research that was required. But the problem ended up resolving itself, and not the right-of-way is still there, but the neighbors worked it all out, our RHA and the neighbor. to
You have
that.
a lot of that in Rockport, don't you?
lot
The
of
right-of-ways.
yes.
And also, I know in Essex, there's weird situations in Essex where you own the house, but you don't own the land that it's on.
Yeah, that can.
So that must sometimes run into
think,
problems.
I think you're talking about Canomo Point. You're probably
Yes,
in Rockport.
yes, yeah.
Also talking about Long Beach,
Yep.
where Long Beach, the town owns the land,
Yeah.
and it leases the land out to the cottage owners.
Right.
And the cottage owners own the houses, the cottages.
But not the land that it's on.
Not the land that it's
Yeah.
on. I don't know if that's the same way at Canomo Point or not. My suspicion is it's something similar, but I didn't look into that.
You mentioned in your propaganda here that basically you believe in term limits,
I do.
and you say you will only run for 2 terms?
That's correct. I'll serve
Or
only
serve 2 terms,
serve
I
2
should say.
terms. Yes, that's right. More precise. Well, each term is 6 years, so that would be if I were successful in serving 2 terms, 12 years. Because I don't believe that this is because the citizens are involved in this election, and I don't believe that it should be that public office like this should be a career for anybody. Not a long-term career.
Well, certainly not 40 years worth.
Not 40 years, because you need to be able to bring new people in.
Yeah.
You need to be able to, the person should be there for a certain amount of years to lead that office, to improve it, and to hire the right people or keep the people there if they're the right people currently, and to lead that office. But not, over 40 years. That's just way too long. Even 30 years is too long.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, and I support term limits for, it's slightly off topic, but on topic, I support term limits for legislatures, governors. We have it for our president.
Everybody.
We should have it for everybody.
Yeah. Right.
But my suspicion is you're never going to get politicians or legislators to push for a law, to vote for a law on term limits.
That's right.
It's got to come from the people. And that may come or should come in a referendum format, such as a change in the Constitution, that the people have to push forward to a public vote to create the term limits, to restrain their legislature. Also, term limits create more competition in politics as well, and help bring new voices to the table.
That would be great, especially here in Massachusetts, where we're in a stranglehold with all the Democrats.
Absolutely.
And Republicans really don't want to run because they're outspent. It's very difficult for a Republican or even an independent
Absolutely.
in Massachusetts.
And I think most people, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, they want to put greater restraints on the career aspect of that politicians are involved in. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, there are exceptions to the rule. Of course, there's a lot of great, political figures that have had long careers in their office. But then you get an example like this where somebody gets so comfortable in his office that he skirts the law and uses his office for political fundraising, and he uses his office to push his own political beliefs rather than just being an administrator of that office.
Yeah.
And that's got to change. We've got to bring these positions back in focus to what they're constitutionally mandated to do.
Great idea.
So, with the Register of Deeds, you deal with obituaries, death certificates, as well as the, say, Homestead Act and different things like that?
It definitely deals with the Homestead Act. The legislature voted to allow an automatic $125,000 for homestead protection without even filing. You can file up to $500,000, but you can be covered for $125,000, and that's to protect yourself against creditors, to protect your home against creditors. Does it get involved in obituaries? I'll confess, I don't think it does, but I'll have to look that up. But definitely, if property is transferred, there needs to be some kind of proof as to why it's being transferred, how it's being transferred, and those documents, the transfer of the title, has to be filed with the Registry of Deeds.
You know, it's a pretty large office in Salem.
Yeah.
If you were to get into office and modernize the office, in other words, take all these files and get them on computer and stuff like that, would you be able to shrink the size of the office?
Right now, the office has about, you mean in terms of personnel or in terms of its physical location?
I'm looking at both.
Okay.
Because to me, it seems like if the current person is not as computer savvy as you are,
Yep.
and he hasn't reduced the records by putting them on computer
Yep.
and then backing them up, you've got a lot of paper there.
Yep. I mean, many records have already been put on digitized already. As I've been thinking about that a little bit, and there would be a danger in getting, well, you'd want to have like some records on old-fashioned microfilm, because the thing is that you want to have 2 servers at least to back up the digitized records in case computers get corrupted.
Right.
And you want to be able to save that information, transfer that information back. And it's also important, that's why I was saying it's important also to be networked with the landmass record system as well, and to be networked with the other registries in the Secretary of State's office.
Now, do they have, you know, the older records, say real old, do they put them onto microfiche and store them that way?
Microfiche, that's it, yeah.
Okay.
They do, they still do that, and they should do that, because if all else fails,
Right.
you want to go back
Have
there.
that, yeah.
You want to still preserve the physical record, you know, because even if microfiche fails, you want to go, if you can, to the actual physical record.
Right.
And have it there. I know that sounds counterintuitive in modern day of technology.
You never know when you might need it.
You know, but yeah, but a lot of those records could also be presented in a different format as historical archives that could be open to the public. It is open to the public anyway, but it's not as visible. You could have it displayed in museum format. You know, for archive or historical research as well. And a lot of people would love to do that. So you can still use that, but it doesn't necessarily all have to be physically housed in the Registry of Deeds office, but it needs to be accessible. And we do, at some point, probably want to reduce the size of the office.
Now, would you be working in Rockport, at the Rockport office?
Well, there is.
Or elsewhere?
Well, the office is more centralized in Salem,
Okay.
but it covers about. A lot of people don't know this. It's a large district. It covers 30 towns in the district.
I saw that. I was amazed.
So I'd be working out of the Salem Registry office. I would be working side by side with if I'm elected, then my coworkers in the Registry of Deeds office. They're not my employees, state employees. They're my coworkers. Just like I refer to my, even though I'm a manager of a store, the people that work side by side with me as sales associates are my coworkers. You know, when we work together, it's not a top-down, it's a lateral relationship. But yeah, I would be working out of the Salem office.
Good.
Okay, well, in the time that we have left, which isn't a lot, if you wanted to take a couple of minutes, tops,
Yeah.
and tell everybody again who you are, why you're running, and you would, you know, obviously appreciate their vote.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My name is Jonathan Ring, like I said, and I'm running for Register of Deeds. You can find out a lot of information about my campaign on www.jonathanring.org. I'm lifelong resident of the North Shore. I'm lifelong resident of Rockport. This district stretches over 30 towns. And as a a community resident, as an advocate, I believe that your deed is your most important asset. It's your most valuable asset. And the job of the registry is to manage that public record so that you can rely on it. Unfortunately, the registry has become too politicized, and it's time to remove politics from the registry. Have it focus on customer service, focus on people, not politics. It's time to make sure that we modernize and upgrade our e-filing system and enhance our fraud alert program. And it's also important to term limit this office, so I'll only be serving 2 terms if I'm lucky enough to serve those 2 terms, and no more than that. Ultimately, the citizens should decide to term limit their representatives in office and their administrators. So my name is Jonathan Ring. Please vote for Jonathan Ring on Tuesday, November 6th, and please go to www.jonathanring.org. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for having me. I really
We want to
appreciate
thank you
it.
for coming on our show. We
Thank you.
appreciate it, and explaining exactly what the Register of Deeds was all about. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for coming. I want to do a little segment called Back of the Page. Once in a while we do a top of the page at the beginning. But the reason I want to do this is because I'm getting very, very angry at what is going on in Washington, D.C. We see the president trying to clean out the swamp, and he's trying to get another member of the Supreme Court appointed. And this man has been taken over the coals. He has an exemplary record his whole career. And he's been taken over the coals by the Democrats in the Senate and a few Republicans as well. But today was the epitome when I saw our current senator, who is running for re-election. She has not been campaigning anywhere in the state. As a matter of fact, I don't think she spends much time in the state. She's out there either selling her book, or campaigning for other people. And the arrogance of Elizabeth Warren to be marching, or to be standing with this group of protesters outside the White House and talking down Judge Kavanaugh. It was just horrible. And in spite of the collapsing evidence that shows that he did nothing wrong, this woman is trying to get him off the bench, and they're destroying his whole career and his family. It's terrible. Who does she think she is? As a woman, I'm appalled that other women are out there protesting, screaming, when there's no evidence. This man has been judged. He's been found guilty before he's been able to prove his innocence. And it's not even up to him to prove his innocence. It's up to the accuser to prove that he's guilty. It's all falling apart from them, but the Democrats will do anything to keep power. And that's how they do it. And I'm really upset for women. You better think about your husbands, your sons, your grandsons. This could happen to them if they get in the way of Democrats. So please call your congressmen, call your senators, and insist that they vote yes for Judge Kavanaugh. Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.